Return of the Jedi wasn't just the end of a saga, it was chaos dressed as destiny. But behind the throne rooms and the forest battles, it was turmoil at every turn. Revenge of the Jedi was the original title. The director could have been Spielberg or David Lynch, and Leia's bikini, ripped from fantasy art, became Hollywood's most infamous costume. These are 20 weird facts about Return of the Jedi, and buried in the Ewoks and the Empire's fall, it was a finale forged from accidents and arguments. This wasn't just an ending, it was chaos forged into myth. Number 1. Before it was a return, it was revenge. For months, the world believed that was the ending. Posters plastered theater walls. Trailers carried the word. Toys hit store shelves stamped with Revenge of the Jedi. Fans lined up to buy what they thought was the promise of a darker finale. But George Lucas started to hesitate. He knew Jedi were not Avengers. They didn't strike back in anger. They didn't kill out of spite. The very title betrayed the code he had written. So, in the final months before release, Lucas pulled the plug. He scrapped the title, ordered new materials, and renamed the film Return of the Jedi. The decision left warehouses of revenge posters and merchandise suddenly obsolete, treasures that collectors would later treat like relics. The irony? That single change reshaped how the saga would be remembered. It wasn't about wrath. It wasn't about vengeance. It was about balance, about light rising from shadow. And in that choice, Lucas gave his trilogy a word that would echo for generations: return. Number 2. The most anticipated movie in the world needed a disguise, so George Lucas gave it one. Return of the Jedi was renamed on set as Blue Harvest, horror beyond imagination. Crew members wore fake hats and t-shirts, equipment was labeled with the phony logo, and locals were told it was just a cheap horror flick shooting in California. The ruse kept vendors from raising prices and fans from mobbing the sets. But secrecy didn't stop there. Lucas even planted fake storylines inside decoy scripts. One draft revealed Yoda naming Lando as the other. Another shifted the final battle to a world called Had Abaddon. One even brought Obi-Wan back from the dead. Actors received them, never sure what was real and what was bait. The misdirection was so thorough that leaks led only to dead ends. By the time cameras wrapped, the lie had done its job. Fans who thought they'd unmasked the ending were holding nothing but smoke, because the truth of Jedi wasn't just hidden, it was buried under a harvest of blue. Number 3. The final chapter of Star Wars almost carried someone else's signature. George Lucas didn't want to direct Return of the Jedi himself. The stress of Empire had drained him, and he wanted fresh eyes. His first call was to his friend Steven Spielberg. Imagine it, the master of E.T. and Raiders steering the saga's finale. But union politics blocked the hire, so Lucas went stranger. He approached David Lynch, the surrealist behind Eraserhead. Lynch read the material and balked, preferring the desert madness of Dune instead. Horror auteur David Cronenberg also passed, choosing Videodrome and The Dead Zone. That left Richard Marquand, a British director known for small thrillers. On paper, he got the job. In practice, Lucas hovered over his shoulder, quietly directing scenes himself, unwilling to let go. The irony? Jedi could have ended as Spielberg's grand adventure, Lynch's fever dream, or Cronenberg's nightmare. Instead, it became something stranger still, a finale credited to Marquand, but forever haunted by Lucas's hand. Number 4. The galaxy was ready for its finale, but the cast wasn't convinced. Harrison Ford was blunt. He argued Han Solo should die in a blaze of sacrifice, believing it would give the trilogy weight. Without that, he feared the ending would feel too neat, too easy. Mark Hamill admitted he wasn't sure about Luke's quieter arc. After the emotional torment of Empire, he expected more darkness. Carrie Fisher confessed the script didn't strike her with the same sharpness as the last film. Even the veterans had doubts. David Prowse dismissed the Ewoks outright, calling them ridiculous. Alec Guinness was reluctant to return at all, offering only a brief appearance after long hesitation. Their concerns weren't hidden. They mirrored the very criticisms fans would later voice. Too soft, too commercial, too many teddy bears for a war story. And yet, in spite of the doubts, the movie roared past them. The cast delivered, the audience cheered, and the finale dominated the box office. Proof that sometimes, even legends doubt the legend they're in, until history answers for them. Number 5. When Return of the Jedi first entered production, Luke Skywalker's new weapon was supposed to look just like the one he lost on Cloud City, a bright blue lightsaber. Early posters, trailers, and promotional materials even showed Luke wielding that blade. But when the crew filmed in the bright Tunisian desert, there was a problem. problem. Against the glaring sky, blue vanished on camera. It looked washed out, almost invisible. The effects team made a quick decision, changed the color to green so it would stand out. What began as a practical fix turned into one of the saga's most iconic images. The green saber instantly symbolized Luke's growth into a true Jedi, a simple change that reshaped Star Wars iconography forever. Number 6. One of Star Wars' most beloved heroes wasn't carefully designed in endless meetings. He was picked in seconds. During pre-production, George Lucas told director Richard Marquand to choose an alien from a stack of sketches. No build-up, no debate, just pick one. Marquand flipped through the pile until he saw Nilo Rodis Jamero's design, a wide-eyed squid-like creature with red skin and a face that looked nothing like a human. He pointed, and that was it. Akbar was locked. Tim Rose operated the puppet, while Eric Bauersfeld provided the voice. Together, they gave life to a character who should have been a background oddity. Instead, Akbar became a symbol of the rebellion's diversity, a strange-looking outsider elevated to the rank of admiral. And when he shouted, "It's a trap!" the random sketch chosen on a whim became immortal. Proof that in Star Wars, legends aren't always engineered. Sometimes they're accidents pulled from the top of the pile. Number 7. George Lucas's first plan for the rebel army on Endor wasn't cuddly teddy bears. It was an army of towering Wookiees. Chewbacca's people were meant to rise up, giving the finale a fierce, primal energy. But the idea collapsed under logistics. Outfitting dozens of full-size Wookiees would be expensive. And by 1983, Lucas was also thinking about merchandise. Smaller creatures meant smaller costumes, easier shooting, and toys that could fit in a child's hand. The Wookiees shrank into Ewoks, wide-eyed, furry, and marketable. Fans were divided. Some saw it as a betrayal of Star Wars grit. Others embraced their charm. But love them or hate them, the Ewoks became part of the saga's DNA. Proof that even galactic wars can be won by teddy bears. Number 8. One of Endor's fiercest warriors wasn't cast through Hollywood channels. He was discovered because of a grandmother listening to the radio. In London, an ad announced open auditions for people under 4 feet tall. 11-year-old Warwick Davis had never acted, but his grandmother brought him in. His excitement, wide eyes, boundless energy made him stand out. On set, Davis was meant to be just another background Ewok. Then fate intervened. Kenny Baker, the actor inside R2-D2, fell ill with food poisoning. Suddenly, the crew needed someone to step into the role of Wicket, the Ewok who shares key scenes with Carrie Fisher. Davis took the part. His playful movements, curiosity, and genuine childlike wonder charmed Fisher and the crew. What began as a lucky break became one of the film's most memorable performances. Baker recovered and returned to R2-D2, but Davis stayed Wicket, the Ewok who won over Princess Leia and, later, generations of fans. A chance radio ad had launched not just an Ewok, but a lifelong Star Wars legacy. Number 9. Jabba the Hutt wasn't CGI. He was a 2,000-pound puppet, one of the largest ever built, requiring a small army to control. Inside his bulk were 3 operators, one for the mouth and tongue, another for the eyes, another for the arms. Outside, additional crew managed the tail and smoke effects. It took nearly a dozen people working in perfect sync just to make Jabba blink, slither, and laugh. For the actors, performing opposite him was surreal. Carrie Fisher later said it was like working beside a living creature, and that's why Jabba still works on screen today. He wasn't pixels, he was weight, he was slime, he was real. Number 10. The monster beneath Jabba's palace wasn't always a stop-motion nightmare. At first, George Lucas wanted it played by a man in a costume. Phil Tippett's effects team built a hulking suit, a towering frame with claws and scales, and filmed test footage. The performer lumbered forward, arms swinging, jaws opening and shutting. It was terrifying on paper. On camera, not so much. Dennis Murin at ILM admitted the creature moved like a big Muppet. The Rancor shuffled awkwardly, looking more like a guy at a Halloween party than a beast that could crush Luke Skywalker in its claws. The experiment was scrapped. The team pivoted, using puppetry and high-speed stop motion to give the Rancor a weight and menace the suit never could. That switch saved the sequence. What might have been B-movie camp transformed into one of the trilogy's most frightening creatures. Because in Star Wars, even monsters need more than rubber and claws. They need illusion and the courage to scrap what doesn't work. Number 11. The Jedi that reached theaters wasn't the full story. In the edit room, some of Luke Skywalker's darkest moments were cut away. One scene showed him in a cave on Tatooine, quietly assembling his new blue-green lightsaber. As he worked, Darth Vader's voice echoed through the Force, a haunting connection between father and son before their final battle. Another sequence captured the desert in chaos. After escaping Jabba's palace, the heroes stagger through a massive sandstorm, Han thanking Luke for saving his life. It added weight to their bond, and then vanished from the final cut. Other trims included an extended Endor subplot, where Moff Jerjerrod hesitated to destroy the moon, and a bizarre alien in Jabba's palace nicknamed Lightbulb Man. Piece by piece, the darker edges fell away, leaving a cleaner, simpler narrative. But the deleted scenes survive in fragments, hints of a finale that leaned toward shadows. A version where Luke's path to Jedi felt less certain, more dangerous. Proof that even legends have ghosts. Hidden reels of film still whispering what might have been. Number 12. Luke's final farewell to his father as setting fire to Darth Vader's armor wasn't filmed on location in Yuma or at Elstree Studios. George Lucas quietly staged it near Skywalker Ranch with a skeleton crew. The studio didn't even know. Lucas wanted the moment intimate, stripped of spectacle, just fire and silence. That secrecy gave the scene its power. When Luke lights the pyre, there's no audience, no rebellion, no celebration, just a son mourning a father, flames consuming the last shadow of Darth Vader. A quiet moment filmed in secret, now burned into Star Wars legend. Number 13. The mask was always meant to come off, and when it did, George Lucas knew the face beneath would define the trilogy's final memory. For a time, he and director Richard Marquand considered giving that moment to a legend. Names like Laurence Olivier and John Gielgud were tossed around, theater titans whose gravitas could make the reveal thunderous. Imagine Vader unmasked as one of the greatest actors alive. But Lucas hesitated. If the face was famous, the moment would become about the actor, not the character. Instead of Anakin Skywalker, audiences would see Olivier or Gielgud. The illusion would break. So they chose Sebastian Shaw, a quiet British actor with no marquee name. His fragile features, weary eyes, and trembling voice gave the scene a haunting vulnerability. He wasn't a legend, he was just a man. And that's what made the unmasking unforgettable. Darth Vader didn't need the face of a star. He needed the face of a father, broken, human, and finally redeemed. Number 14. Carrie Fisher wasn't meant to lounge in Jabba's palace under heavy robes. She asked for something sleeker, more striking. Costume designer Aggie Gerard Rogers delivered, drawing inspiration from Frank Frazetta's fantasy art. Paintings where warrior women battled in gleaming, impossible armor. The result was Leia's metal bikini, bronze plates, flowing silk, and chains that bound her to Jabba. On screen, it was pulp fantasy brought to life. Off screen, Fisher quickly realized it was torture. The costume pinched, offered no support, and forced her to stay perfectly upright or risk a wardrobe disaster. She joked about it later, but the image stuck. For some, it became iconic empowerment. The princess who killed her captor with the very chains meant to enslave her. For others, it was pure exploitation, reducing Leia to pulp fantasy fodder. Fisher herself lived with both truths. She mocked the space bikini for decades, but also acknowledged its place in pop culture. Because in that moment, the symbol flipped. A chain of humiliation became a weapon, a pinup turned assassin, and a bikini built from fantasy art became one of cinema's most infamous costumes. Number 15. During production, 11-year-old Warwick Davis wasn't just starring as Wicket. He was also the lead in a mockumentary called Return of the Ewok. The project followed him as he auditioned for the movie, with cameos from Harrison Ford, Mark Hamill, and Carrie Fisher. The film was never finished. It vanished into obscurity, resurfacing only in fragments and bootleg copies passed among fans. For Star Wars diehards, it became a holy grail, a bizarre, half-forgotten side project that blended documentary, comedy, and Ewok charm. Proof that even on the set of a galactic finale, there was still room for whimsy. Number 16. When Lucas first screened Return of the Jedi, he was horrified, not by the story, but by the sound. John Williams' score came through muffled, the mix uneven, the theater's audio nowhere near what he envisioned. Lucas didn't shrug it off. He set out to fix theater sound entirely. The result was THX, a certification system that forced cinemas to meet strict standards for acoustics, equipment, and playback. The ripple effect was enormous. Thanks to Jedi's poor test screenings, every blockbuster after was heard with more clarity, more power, and more immersion. The Force wasn't just with the saga, it was in the speakers. Number 17. When Leia entered Jabba's palace, disguised as the bounty hunter Boushh, her voice didn't sound like Carrie Fisher. That distorted, raspy tone came from another sci-fi icon. The helmet's voice track was recorded by Pat Welsh, the actress who gave E.T. his voice in Spielberg's classic. Welsh had a naturally gravelly sound, sound, which sound engineers processed into something alien. It was a sly connection between two of the biggest sci-fi films of the era, proof that the galaxy far, far away shared a voice with the little alien who phoned home. Number 18. Star Wars fans had seen TIE fighters since the very first film, but no one in the galaxy had ever actually spoken the name. The starfighters screamed across the screen, but remained nameless in dialogue. That changed during Jedi's climactic space battle. Lando Calrissian, leading the charge in the Millennium Falcon, shouted,
"Fighters coming in!"
For the first time, the ships got their on-screen name. The detail clicked with fans instantly. TIE, short for Twin Ion Engines, gave the starfighters new weight in the lore. One shouted line cemented a piece of vocabulary that's lived in Star Wars culture ever since. Number 19. Doubts circled the film. Critics debated the Ewoks, the cast questioned the script, and even Lucas worried about the finale's tone. But when the movie finally hit theaters in May 1983, none of it mattered. Audiences poured in. Return of the Jedi earned $309 million in North America, $475 million worldwide, the highest-grossing film of the year. Theaters were packed, toy shelves emptied, and suddenly, the soft finale looked like box office dominance. The Academy noticed too. The film scored 4 nominations in technical categories, though it lost each one. Still, the Academy handed Lucasfilm a Special Achievement Award for visual effects, ensuring that every entry in the original trilogy walked away with Oscar Gold. It was vindication. The doubted finale closed the trilogy not just with fireworks on Endor, but with triumph in Hollywood. And decades later, the numbers still hold. The Force didn't just return in 1983, it conquered. Number 20. The ending fans know. Luke rejecting the dark side, Anakin's redemption, peace restored, wasn't the only version on the table. In early story meetings, Lucas pitched something far darker. After Vader's sacrifice, Luke would remove the mask, then put it on himself. The final words, "Now I am Vader." Lawrence Kasdan backed the idea, but it was deemed too grim for the trilogy's close. The thought lingered, a finale where the hero becomes the villain. Instead, Jedi chose hope, and that choice made the saga timeless. Bonus fact: in 1983, audiences believed they were watching the end. Vader was gone. The Empire defeated. The heroes reunited. The story felt complete. But George Lucas wasn't finished. Over the decades, the galaxy stretched outward. Prequels, sequels, animated series, and eventually streaming shows. Books, comics, and games filled the years between. What began as a trilogy became a living universe, one that still grows today. Return of the Jedi closed the story, but it also opened the door. Return of the Jedi wasn't a simple finale. It was a battle of doubt, disguise, and last-minute chaos, stitched into a farewell that almost broke apart. The title changed. The cast questioned it. The Ewoks divided generations. And still, the film stormed 1983, closing a saga that had redefined cinema. It could have ended in darkness, with Luke wearing his father's mask. Instead, it chose light. A son's compassion, a father's redemption, a galaxy reborn. 4 decades later, the trilogy's last chapter still echoes, not because it was perfect, but because it dared to end with hope. If this story still lives in your memory, drop a comment. Tell us what legendary film we should explore next, because the Force didn't just return, it endured.